All right, this is Josh Mandel recording my first try connecting to the ChatGPT health interface. I tried this with the Anthropic connector the other day with mixed success, but I figured this is a good opportunity. I just got off the wait list with some help from somebody at OpenAI who followed me on Twitter, and I'm just going to give this a shot. So I'm going to bring my health data together. It's going to be protected and secure. It's subject to a health privacy notice, which I haven't read in detail, but I have seen the way that they've described it in the popular press. You can use health to interact with apps. The policies, those apps are going to have their own terms and policies. Good enough for me. They're not going to replace my doctor. Fine. Let's see what happens. Here we are in health, and I'm going to connect my medical records. That sounds like where I want to start. So interestingly, it opened a conversation where the user, which is to say me, took this turn that I didn't actually type, saying connect my medical records, which is an interesting way to kind of bootstrap into an existing functionality where you've got maybe some combination of MCPs and UI cards in the OpenAI app style. And so the model is thinking about what to do. And now I say the model, but unlike most of the ChatGPT interfaces here, there is no model selector. I don't know what model I'm using. Normally, I wouldn't trust the default model that I see anywhere in the ChatGPT interface. I like to have some degree of control and know whether thinking is turned on, but I guess that's at least some style of thinking turned on here. Um, okay. Anyway, I got a UI card. There's only one real option, which is to continue. So of course I shall do so. And now there's this sort of modal pop-up, which is still loading. To make health more useful, you can choose to connect health with your EHR using a third-party provider, BeWell. That's exactly what I want to try out. I'm going to authorize BeWell to access my medical records and provide them to OpenAI. I hope I'll get my own copy of them as well. I'm thinking BeWell might offer them directly to me to download, and they may share my information from my ChatGPT account and prompts with BeWell, which is sort of interesting and sort of breaks my mental model here, depending on what prompts they're sharing. Of course, I'm pretty happy with them sharing the prompt that says, please connect to my records. But later, if I'm asking ChatGPT a bunch of questions about my health records, I don't necessarily expect that BeWell is going to see those questions. I would think about them more as a data conduit, but I might be missing something here about kind of how the partnership works or how the different components are connected. This consent will last for 1 year, and I can revoke at any time by disconnecting medical records from health. Okay, well, the only choice I have is to agree if I want to try this out. So here we go. The medical records app is now ready to use. There's a little toast that appears at the top here. And then there's a built-in tool call that happened, which is what tool is being called here. Demographic form widget displayed is the message. So this is using OpenAI's kind of tool integration where the tools can return UI cards. I forget the name for this, but ChatGPT apps or something like that. I'm just going to go through this flow. Interestingly, they show me sort of date formatting here, but no guidance. So I'm going to, you know, cheat a little bit. Nope, I can't put a slash here. I can just type. Fair enough. Okay, let's continue here. We'll be interested to see how much of this workflow happens right in the browser tab for ChatGPT and how much takes me out. Um, okay, so I see they haven't implemented one of these Tefka connectors yet. They just have a list of healthcare providers, and this probably comes from some variety of provider directories. And my local provider is called Associated Physicians of Madison. I happen to know that Unity Point Health is the underlying Epic instance that they use, so I'm just going to go ahead and connect here. And so this is looks like it's using just the standard Epic Smart on Fire flow. So log in with your password. I've got that preloaded. I'll choose between my own records and my daughter's records. It's asking for everything, and it gives me some number of choices about how long to share for. So I think I said my consent was going to last a year, so I'll share for a year as well, just to kind of align those policies. And now we get a status that says connecting inside that widget, and then it's disappeared for a little bit. So if I wanted to connect to another provider, I can't quite do that yet because we're still syncing. But I guess the idea is kind of connect to one provider at a time. And in the meantime, oh, I could connect to another one while this is syncing. Let's try one more. I actually don't know if I know passwords for other providers, but let's just give it a shot. Hope that my password manager has the right information populated here. I'll open the provider search. I notice it doesn't quite know, it doesn't rather remember where I left off, but that's fine. UW Health, I should have records there. And it says this one is currently syncing, which sounds good, or sounds like what I expect. It opens the OAuth flow in a new tab here. And I don't think I'm going to know my email address or my username, but let's see. And that does do the trick. Okay, let's go ahead and text my mobile phone. All right, and same basic flow here. Be Well Connected Health has represented that they're not going to share my data except when I ask. I'm going to approve. Different set of choices here. In this case, 1 year is the max. So there's some interaction between the organizational policies and what the app has asked for. But fortunately, they all kind of intersect at 1 year. And now we're synchronizing a couple of these guys. I'm going to open a new tab just to see how this state kind of shows up in the new tab. Looks like they're pretty well matched. So these connections are ongoing. They're taking a while, and we'll get a follow-up message when it's finished. So that's pretty cool, at least that they're going to be able to proactively tell me when something is finished. And I will say that compared with the Anthropic connector, this has the really nice property that I didn't have to go through an ID proofing workflow. Someday, of course, it might be very convenient to go through an ID proofing workflow if it could lead to automated record location services, but those don't appear to be widely working today. So I think the current connectivity that OpenAI is using through BeWell that's just using a vanilla Smart on Fire workflow, that's actually a pretty smart way to do it. And of course, BeWell is very deeply integrated with and working to improve the experience in Tefka. So one expects this is going to get better and better over time. I will say this is taking a little bit of a surprising amount of time to synchronize my records. I've gone through this process many times, including yesterday as I've been testing my own connector flow, and it took about 20 seconds to download literally every Fire resources that was available from Unity Point. So I wouldn't have expected it was going to take more than a minute to synchronize the data, but maybe there's some kind of batch job happening on the back end. We'll check back in a little bit and see how it does. As I'm waiting for that to finish, I just was browsing around the ChatGPT apps panel under settings and a little more information about the medical records app. I connected it today. The developer of this app is OpenAI, so they use BeWell as kind of a connectivity service provider, but OpenAI is the developer of this app, which explains the deep integration and how well it works. They may have been putting together some custom functionality even to support the kind of flows that are required by an app like this. Tools associated with templates are hidden. I don't know what that means, but confirm demographics. Those tools won't be usable. Okay. I'm not really sure what that is, but there's a confirm demographics that can display the widget. I guess maybe that's where I entered my email address or my name and birth date rather. There's a command to delete all the data from BeWell. Do not call this tool directly, okay? You can delete or disconnect a specific medical provider. You can get a Fire record, which includes vaccination history and other data. Um, this is truncated here, so I can't see quite what the options are, but there's, hints that some of the parameters include start date and end date, so there's something interesting going on there. And then there's get labs, which retrieve lab results from Fire observations, which I would have thought was just a subset of Fire records, but maybe not. I can't see the full documentation here, so it's a little confusing. Connection status, connections from widget, get the OAuth redirect URL for a selected medical provider, which is a really interesting kind of granular detail to expose through a tool like this. Uh, I generally would have thought that the whole process of establishing a connection would be kind of wrapped in one tool, and we wouldn't need the model to be exploring and manipulating OAuth URLs at this level, but I may not have the full picture about what's going on here. Generate a concise patient summary across all available records. Cool. Get vitals. This is another kind of specialized version of fetching FHIR resources. Internal endpoint, private visibility. One has to wonder about that. Search clinical notes. This is maybe the most interesting area. Search for me at least, search the user's clinical notes for a given query. Um, Search medical providers. And again, some of these low-level functionalities around token exchange and OAuth workflow. So interesting. I can't say I've learned a ton here, but there is at least some detail to explore, and maybe we can ask the model about some of these functions while we wait. So that still says it's synchronizing. Can you explain this tool? If I hit stop, is that going to stop it from connecting? I mean, I hit enter here. Okay, connection and syncing for Unity Point is now complete. Um, so I don't know, maybe I had to reload the page, or maybe it really did just finish at exactly that moment. It's a little hard to say. Um, but I'm going to give this a standard prompt that I've used with other AI agents where I've loaded this same data set, which is look through my records about everything relating to concussion history and give a summary of course of events, therapies tried, and so forth, as well as some suggestions for next steps. So that's transcribing. In the meantime, we see that the parameters you can search for have to do with what types of resources, state ranges, text filters, counts, maximum tokens lets you cap, um, where did it go? Cap how long the return text can be. I wonder what the return values are. Is it just text? Because that does preclude doing things like writing code that takes the average of all historical blood pressures, which is a simple example of a place where it's really powerful to be able to write code over the data rather than just searching the data and getting JSON dumped back into your context window. But all right, let's see how this is going to do. It's going to search clinical notes for concussion. It's going to check providers and conditions. Uh, so it's calling parallel tools, which makes sense because it wants to do a bunch of calls all at once. So it's going to look for prescriptions that mention headache or post-concussion. It's going to search for procedures that mention concussion or head injury. It's going to search for conditions. Oop. Um, and then it's going to search for clinical notes. It says it's only going to ask for 10 notes, and it's going to search for the word concussion. So these kinds of limits, arbitrary limits, can be quite misleading and disruptive if they happen to catch only older content or if the sort order is not perfect. Okay, found many condition entries in your records with this date, about 70 condition records returned. 70, I wonder if that's just duplicative. Um, the return text is generic placeholder. Interesting, generated text for condition. So I wonder what the underlying data is. Uh, Concrete next step. So this is, I would say, a very disappointing response. It's sort of giving me low-level details about the tool results that it got from its tool calls, whereas what I'm hoping for is more of a clinical summary. Um, Let me try something. This video is going to get a little bit long, but I think it's worth it for a quick exploration here. Um, Yesterday I worked on the Health Skillz connector. Healthskillz.joshuamandel.com is probably the right entry point, and I created this skill, which I've used with Claude before. I haven't used it with OpenAI, and they don't natively support skills, but I'm still curious. I think maybe the VM that they put you in here doesn't have quite enough capabilities to make this work, but hold on a second. All right, I'm going to upload this skill. I'm going to say, can you unzip this and read through the skill and let me know if you can run it in your environment. We'll see how that does. In the meantime, I'll open up another tab and show you the kind of result I'm hoping for. So this was from yesterday when I connected Claude using this same skill, and I asked it basically the same kind of question to look through my concussion history. And It did a set of searches through FIRE resources and free text notes, and it gave me, what I thought was really a pretty nice overview, key findings, 3 documented head injuries, and it did a whole analysis of these, including information about, you know, each of the visits where I had incurred a head injury of some kind, those 3 incidents, summary of the diagnoses and treatments, including a timeline, rehabilitative therapies that I had tried, observations, the healthcare providers who were involved, and some suggestions about, next things I could try. So, for me, that was a really good, well-organized response. Um, let's see how OpenAI does with the ChatGPT here. It says it can't run it end to end. Bun, check mark, not installed. Can you can you install Bun? What I don't know is whether the sandbox environment has access to the internet. But what they say is I can't install system level tools or modify the base system. Internet access is restricted. Okay, so without kind of a proper VM, it can't really use Skillz. Although, I could do an example where I use the Codex command line application to achieve something pretty similar. Let me try that in a little bit. I'll say get this skill and try connecting to my health records. And I've never tried the use of skills inside of Codex. I think they do have a native way to load them, but the nice thing about skills is they're also just kind of folders with instructions. So I'm just gonna give it a quick shot and see what it's gonna run the create session script. So it's got a session ID for me. Let me just run these side by side. Okay, it's gonna give me a connection URL here. So I'll say I'm gonna connect to a healthcare provider. So you'll see this is basically the same workflow that we looked at in ChatGPT earlier. In this case, it's my hobby projects app that I'm connecting instead of an official connector. And now, just in terms of how long this takes, you can see I got 16 types of FIRE resources across all the bundle pages, and I'm fetching all the available attachments, which are to say the clinical notes and documents. And the process of fetching all those really should take well under a minute. It's about 5 to 10 megabytes of data altogether. And now that I've finished, I can say send to AI, and I'll let this guy know that it is ready to proceed. And we'll see if it's able to decrypt and get the data out the other side here. And if so, I'll copy the same prompt that I used here in the ChatGPT question. So it's doing a little bit of overview analysis just on its own, checking out counts of different resources, looking for how many observations there are with dates attached, and so forth. It hasn't yet read my question about looking through the concussion-related records, but I'm assuming it'll get there once it finishes its own initial analysis. It's taking the initiative to remove some duplicates, investigate medication references. It's going a little bit deep here. I might stop it just so we don't get too far off track, but I'm inclined to give it a minute, see how far it gets. Okay, they've done some kind of overview and they're willing to go deeper. Good, good, good. Demographics, all that looks fine. Pretty nice overview. I'm not a clinician, so this isn't medical advice. Happy to help interpret and summarize, but confirm anything important with your care team. Wow, it's really got a very conservative bent there, based on the way that it's been trained. Let's see. In this case, it is searching through some text notes, which I think is good. Organizing and filtering concussion-related documentation. Preparing to extract note content, searching attachments for medication mentions, okay? And it's using a bunch of search terms here that it knows are relevant, although some of them are probably not going to be very specific, like PT for patient, unless they mean physical therapy. Either way, that could show up in a bunch of places. Identifying key clinical notes for analysis. That's good. It's being somewhat conservative about reading full note content until it has decided which notes it wants to read. It's a good strategy for managing context. It's got plenty of context left, though. Right now, it's used only about 5% of its overall 400,000 token context window. But these kinds of analyses can get big if you carelessly start dumping search results into context. You can pretty easily fill it up with 5 megabytes of JSON, given that the whole context window is just 400,000 tokens. I will say I'm pretty happy that the Codex CLI was able to use that skill right out of the box, first shot, given that I had only ever tested it in the Claude.ai web interface before. So that was pretty fun to see. It sure is reading a lot, and overall, I think that's good. It's already burned through about 40,000 tokens of context. Hoping it's gonna get somewhere once it finishes all this review. So, I tried a follow-up prompt over here because ChatGPT offered to do some follow-ups. It's still just like calling a bunch of tools and telling me about the tool results. I wanted to synthesize the overview I requested. Okay. Meanwhile, here's what the OpenAI Codex command line interface did. We got a course of events going back to 2020, no longer taking medications 2025, a list of therapies we've tried, suggestions for next steps. I noticed that there was some ambiguity in the notes about which tricyclic antidepressant I had used, nortriptyline versus amitriptyline. So clarify that so the medical record is correct. If symptoms persist, consider a focused follow-up. Um, okay, I would say that overall the quality of this analysis is better than what I got from the health app in this web UI, but worse than what I got from the Claude.ai web interface, basically based on a similar prompt. With more follow-up and a little bit of pestering, we get now a timeline over here. Key limitations in the record data. Many condition entries and notes returned only auto-generated placeholders. So this sounds worrisome and dangerous. And I know that the underlying FHIR data are actually correct. So can you show me the raw information that you're looking at? I wonder if there's a problem with the Be Well connector or if data are being truncated or otherwise um, limited as they're being presented to you. Practical synthesis interpretation neutral. So this is, this sort of tagging with evidence that it's doing things the right way, like in a neutral way, is a kind of funny tick that these models have. That sometimes if the system instructions really harp on a point like this, instead of just doing it with a neutral tone, the model will say, I'm doing it with a neutral tone in order to really kind of try to show that it's doing it right. And I can't imagine that goes over very well with human reviewers, but maybe it does help convince some of the automated AI reviewers that this is a better response. And so maybe they wind up getting scored better in different kind of reinforcement learning paradigms for adopting that kind of strategy. Okay, it's going to fetch the connected provider status. It says, you're right to be skeptical. Thanks for calling this out. I pulled the raw records the system returned. Provider connection status. Sync errors. Connection error. Sync status retrieved. Connection errors present on both providers. Um, Condition. Generated text for condition. Well, there's a lot of junk in these records. So the fact that there's a bunch of record condition and resources that don't say much is not that surprising. But it seems like it doesn't have access to the raw fire data. So I'm just going to ask it a follow-up prompt just to give me a verbatim excerpts if it can. And my guess is that it can't. It's probably being limited by a set of tools that don't show it the raw data, so it can't do things like that. Just to give another example over here, like calculate average systolic blood pressure and draw a histogram. Um, this is sort of the power of being able to write code against the actual data rather than just searching a bunch of fire resources and getting back JSON in your context window. Okay, let's see what we got here. Hmm. Um, no clinical notes found for provided search criteria. If it's doing all this without any access to notes, it's going to have a hard time generating a good summary. Let's go back to the summary that we did see. We really just saw the codes of the visits and condition entries. So it's totally missing the free text notes or the search isn't working. It seems like the APIs that it has access to are supposed to do searches, but it's not getting them. So the underlying FHIR, let's see if it can understand how to follow that. And in the meantime, we'll see what ChatGPT is up to here. It's writing some Python code to create some histograms, and it made a nice little text histogram for me. That is actually pretty cute. I didn't find structured systolic blood pressure observations, so I extracted them from clinical notes. Um, Now that's a little surprising though. It suggests there's something wrong with that JSON file. The good thing about having this environment running here is we should be able to take a look. Okay, so we're not getting observations. Here's social history observations. Social history, social history. Okay, so my connector is, oh no, here's a vital sign. That should be a blood pressure, or could be a blood pressure. This is the position I was in while taking a blood pressure. Vital signs, that looks Well, we know the fact that I was sitting while a lot of blood pressures were taken. All right, well, I've got a little debugging work to do in my own connector. We've got a lot of information about the cuff size, but we might not be fetching all the pages of results. So we'll give that a shot. In the meantime, this has been a kind of long-winded overview, live exploration of some of these capabilities, but hopefully it gives you an idea of what's currently out there, how you can connect to your records, and how these capabilities are starting to mature.